If anything, and if being loud isn't your thing, and trying to be louder has only made you like just cringe and shrink, you're gonna absolutely adore to meet Melitta Campbell, who's joining me today. My name is Mouna, and this is your new episode of Crumbs to Courage. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Muna. I'm really excited to be here too.
It's like, it's so exciting and also just got me thinking, as an introvert, is this not like the cringiest part ever when you're being asked to introduce yourself?
Yeah, it's just like, let's just cut into the conversation.
Yeah, like I'm all out for this. And I think just to give a little background to everyone who's joining us who might not know so much about you at the moment, I know that the latest hot news has been that you have been the author of Value Whispering, which is what I've been like playing on words around, announcing the description of the events. And Value Whispering is a book detailing a smarter way to market small businesses without them having to shout louder than others. And in this book, you mentioned how you used to tame your own voice. And you mentioned as well how, you know, teachers can condition us to that at school, living room as well, to perhaps families as well play a role on that at home. So that's where I'd like to start.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
because I want to think to what has crippled your voice over time and what might be crippling the voices of many people listening to us today until that point where, you just had enough and you had to scream it, or shall I say whisper it?
Yeah. Well, that moment came when I got thrown out of a job interview after just 10 minutes. But I'll backtrack a little bit because I grew up labeled the shy girl. And I was quite a shy child, and anytime there were big family gatherings or, the neighbors all got together for Christmas, I would really hate it. You always got paraded around, and I just try so hard to hide behind my mum. It really wasn't something that I enjoyed. And then over time, I really took on that label and decided bit by bit that, if I'm you know, we're kind of rewarded for being quiet. So I got my head down, I worked hard at school, I got good grades. At university, I did well, I was likable, did well in my first job. I did okay. Um, because I was hardworking, I was agreeable, didn't rock the boat, didn't challenge anybody. And but in that process, I let other people speak for me way too often. So friends or boyfriends or bosses, and I just went along with it. Just even when inside I was thinking, I don't want to do this, or this isn't right, there's a better way. I just would go along with it. But then at age 25, I had my dream job in PR, which I lost. And I spent 6 months interviewing for a new job. And I just reached the point where I thought, this is it. I'm never going to get another job. Then I got the chance to interview for the British government for their communication pool. And I went along, and we had to do a strategy before, we had to do a whole day of tests. And so the last part was the interview. And I thought, great, I've made it this far. This is just a formality. So I went into that interview feeling pretty confident, but then after 10 minutes, the lead interviewer, because it was a panel with 5 people, stood up and threw my CV back in my face and told me to get out. I was like, "What? Is this part of the interview?" Because I knew the government is like can be quite a tough environment, so I thought, "Well, maybe they're testing me." And she's like, "No, I've had enough of your lies. Just get out." I was like, "I'm sorry, I haven't been lying. Why would you think that?" And she turned around and she said, "All you've said is, 'We've done this and we've done that.' All I can imagine is that you are passing someone else's work off as your own, and I won't have anyone in my team that steals credit from other people." And I was shocked because up until that point, I'd worked in small companies and I was the only one. There was no one to steal credit from. I tried to explain this, but it was too late. So I just really tried so hard not to cry until I left the building. But then I just cried all the way home, and for the next sort of 2 or 3 days, just sat on the sofa. I was completely depressed. Then when that pity fog cleared, I realized she's right. I hadn't stolen anyone else's credit, but I hadn't given myself credit. I hadn't really stood up for my value. I wasn't being clear about my capabilities and why I do things one way and what I've learned from mistakes and all of this. So that's exactly what I did in my next interview, and I got the job on the spot. So, well, not quite on the spot, but by the time I got home, I put the key in the lock and they rang to say, "Can you start on Monday?"
And
So
that's
that
such a different outcome compared to hitting home crying.
Yeah, but, it was the universe gives us these lessons, and then in the end, it really, like, slaps us in the face with them if we don't really get the hint. So that was clearly what happened in that situation. Um, but from that moment on, it just made me realize that sharing your value isn't about bragging or being pushy or arrogant, but about being clear, about really understanding what you bring to every situation, what you bring for every client, and letting them know, because otherwise they're not gonna know this if you don't tell them. So I started to really work on how can I do this as someone who's shy and more introverted and doesn't love the spotlight. How can I make sure that my value comes across clearly through everything I do? Because all of my decisions are aligned, my results are aligned, the way I show up, everything is communicating a message. I got my degree was in design management, so, that I got at art school, and that was all about how communication isn't just about our words, it's about everything we do. Every way that people perceive and experience us communicates a message. So, value whispering is the concept that I eventually named this process, but it's really about being aligned with who you are, being really congruent, but as a small business owner, I've seen that when you do this, it makes sales and marketing feel so much more natural to do as well, because it becomes just an extension of who you are and how you help people. It's not like a bolt on thing that you have to push yourself to do. And that all became the book in the end.
Mm. And that's like a very impressive framework. I mean, the book has everything. It's like literally your 101 marketing to get started, from believing in yourself and your the own value. Again, I like to differentiate someone's value as opposed to the value they provide to a potential clients and
Mm.
prospect, dissociate that. And before you wrote that framework, like you yourself probably had to go through that process of unlearning these lies and conditioning, the good girl narrative. How was that? How was that process? Like, what exactly did you have to crush as beliefs to start finding the part of you that you probably weren't even listening to yourself?
Yeah, I don't think there was like one thing or even a realization, but I think bit by bit, as I tried something new and it worked, and I had that feedback that, oh yes, we can see that you're good at this, and um, it was something that was very gradual. So my first book is A Shy Girl's Guide to Networking, and the process of hating working to becoming really good at it, it wasn't an overnight thing. That took several years, and to speak confidently on stages, for example, that took more than 10 years. So it's a step by step process, and for some people I see, like, I'm part of a Toastmasters group, and sometimes people arrive, they get involved on the first session, they give a talk, then the next one, and they're off. It's like, wow, it took me like a year to do that. But everyone has their own path, so it's really I like to do like comfortably push outside my comfort zone. So I just take those tiny steps, and then your comfort zone is like grows a little bit more, and then as you're confidence grows in one area, it grows in other areas as well. So it starts to compound over time as well. So I don't think it was one thing necessarily, but I I I got intentional about it. Intentional about this is how I want to show up in the world. This is the impact I want to have. This is what I want to be known for. How what person do I need to be and what do I need to do to have that? And then work backwards. Okay, what are the steps I need? Who are the people I need supporting me? What are the little experiments I can do? And it's not always clear at the beginning. You don't have a fully formed plan, but it's just once you're aware of that and you have that intention, then those opportunities start to show themselves. You become much more tuned into the people that will support you, and you're much more likely to say yes to opportunities that might be a little bit scary, but you can see, oh, this is the next step that's going to take me to the other side. So it just you taking aligned action becomes much easier. Um, so there are so many limiting beliefs and doubts and fears that I have overcome bit by bit, but I don't necessarily think it was conscious in the moment. But what I realized is once you start, you attune into what is holding you back more, because very often fears hide in very legitimate excuses like I don't have time. Yeah. Oh, I can't do that, I don't have time. I was like, well, there's a fear behind that, because you can make time for things that are really important. So either it isn't important enough for you, or there's some fear there to be tackled. But as you start to overcome some of these, you just start to realize, "Oh, hold on a minute. This doesn't feel like it's actually telling me the truth. My little voice is it's lying to me again." And then you can start to challenge it and overcome them, and it becomes easier over time.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like it's a process. It's constantly there's like this misconception around, well, I don't like the terminology of healing, but that the well-being space brings like it's so one-off, like once done and for all, and then you move on and live happily ever after. You forget that actually, it's not you go to the gym once and have super muscles. There's a constant progress. And when you stop going to work out or movement, then your muscles stop growing. Um,
Yeah, and
it's
I
that.
think it's you, can default back as well. So if you do like, as you say, going to the gym, you start, like, gaining strength, but if you stop, you lose that strength, and you know how to get it back the next time, but these bad habits and bad, like, negative thinking can come back. So there are certain lessons that I've learned and I've overcome, but then I'll look back in a year's time and realize, oh, I need to learn that again. I need to remember what I'd learned before and apply it more consistently. So I think, back then I didn't know things like coaches, or there wasn't necessarily the support that you can get now. Um, and that can definitely speed things up. But just finding good people in your network, or asking a boss or a colleague to mentor you, even if it's just for one specific task, that can really make a difference too, make things easier.
It's like something that you had been growth minded and being like, okay, this door is closing in front of me. I can take a learning from this. And for example, that small step is that next interview using I instead of we, as simple as that, can like shift the entire dynamic. And when you prove to yourself this works, continue that direction, finding other small steps that can feed your confidence basically, and continue demonstrating you can do it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And we were talking before, we came live, that I used to speak up in meetings, and it took me so much effort to do that, because I was shy and unsure, and I was in a meeting room with usually, like, all everyone else were men and more senior. So speaking up was difficult, and when I did, I was just ignored. And I was like, I had this default, oh, it's because I'm a woman, they're talking over me. But then when I started learning my public speaking skills and I started speaking up in meetings, people stopped and they listened. And when I was being more intentionally me and aligning with my values and what was important to me, they listened even more. And I started to build a reputation, and I built my brand and my sort of personal brand in the corporate tech context. And then I got promoted 3 times in a row within 12 months, which was pretty unheard of in the banking industry for a woman at that time, who didn't have a banking background either. So I realized, oh, it wasn't necessarily that I was being talked over. It's that I wasn't being clear and I wasn't being confident. And so once you have that confidence in your value, it makes it so much easier to speak to that naturally. And so that was one really big important thing when I started working with business owners and developed the value whispering blueprint, was to have that mindset side and to have people build the intention, but grow the confidence to back that up as well. Because sometimes that alone grows their business and starts the clients coming through. And we realized, oh, that was just it was just that hesitate. You were hesitant, so the clients were hesitant too. And once you fix that, that 9 times out of 10, that already starts to change things dramatically in your business.
Hmm. And you mentioned that, that what was holding you back in at work is also like something that is spreading in all areas of life. How do
Mm.
you see that? How did you see the change as well, like outside the business groups side of things?
Yeah. It was quite funny because I remember I used to be so shy that I really struggled to do anything on my own. And one time, my kids were maybe 8 and 10, and I was going to meet some mums out for a drink in town, and their babysitter was late, so they were late, so I had to wait for half an hour on my own. And I rang my husband, and he was like, "Oh, do you want me to come down and join you? Are you okay?" Because he knew that being on my own was really terrifying for me. And I was like, "Actually, I think I'm okay. I'm gonna have a drink. I'm gonna sit in the bar and wait for them, and I'm fine." And it was just such a, like, small realization that I'd personally grown so much that I could just sit in a bar for half an hour on my own and feel okay and not completely freak out and, hide in the toilet till they arrived or something, which I would have done not so long ago. But yeah, my husband was like, "Are you sure you're okay?" So I think, and then it enabled me to say yes to more things. So when I was invited to join a TEDx team, um, first in communications and then as a speaker coach, I was like, oh, yes, okay, I'd love to do that. I mean, there was still part of me in the back of my mind like, you can't do that, you're too quiet. I thought, no, I'm going to do this. They've asked, so I'll figure it out. And I did. It was brilliant. I was with one event for 5 years and another event for a further 2. And yeah, bit by bit, you just say yes to more things, and each time you say yes, that builds that confirmation that you can do this. So yeah, it is an ongoing process, and I'm really excited to see where the next yeses go, because who knows what's coming next.
Mhm. I'm very excited about what might be coming next as well for you. But before that, you mentioned you have, um, two daughters. They must be teenagers now? Or
Yes.
yeah? And, I mean, they're watching you, uh, build a business about claiming your value and everything that you do. What do you think they are learning from how you live it behind the scenes?
So it's been really wonderful to build my business with them, because I started my business because I couldn't get childcare when my first daughter was born. Um, and so that was 18 years ago. My business had just turned 18, so it's officially an adult business now. Um, and but they've seen me struggle, because and I burned out on my first business because I was putting everything into my family, everything to my clients, and nothing for myself. And I started just saying yes to any client that asked me to work with them. And I wasn't being discerning. I wasn't really thinking, is this a dream client? And so I ended up doing work that I could do well, it paid well, but it didn't really light me up. It didn't fill with me with energy. It didn't help me grow. So yeah, I started to burn out with that business. But so they've seen how there are ups and there are downs and how I've coped with that. And I've always involved them. And in the early days, I was driving around with CDs in the car, the self-development ones. We were listening to The Secret and stuff like this on CD. So that was their education. They were driving around in the car with me and learning, absorbing all of this. But then they would come out with things. So sometimes I was like, "Ah, it's really hard today, and I know I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed. There's so much to do." And then my youngest, I think she was probably 4 at the time, said, "Mommy, you just have to take a pause, take a deep breath, and think, what's the one small step you could take?" It's
Oh
like,
my god.
wow. So I think the biggest thing that it's helped them with is this idea that failure isn't a bad thing. Failure is how we learn, it's how we grow, it can be like fun, not necessarily in the moment, but trying new things without the expectation that you have to be good at this, it has to be perfect, that idea that it might not work out, but then that's quite cool because you've learned something new in the process. I think that's a really big thing that they've taken on, and I see them saying yes to things that scare them and trying out new things and not worrying so much. So that's been really wonderful, and they've both got involved in charities at a young age. They wanted to raise money for to help the WWF or for a child's cancer charity, and they've just done it. Like they rang up. They were in a garden center, and they just went to the owner and said, "You've got a space over there. Can I have a table one day and bring some cakes to sell for charity?" And they were like, "Sure." So they have that initiative. They know it could be done. So it's been really fun to build alongside them. Um, yeah, it'd be interesting to hear when they're perhaps a little bit older, their reflection on how that thinking has changed the way they see the world. But it's been nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know that, I ask because I know so many parents listening might be thinking about it. Quite often, you build your business, it's something with the idea in the back of your mind, or either leaving a legacy or doing something for others. And it is a tough process. It's not an easy one to build and grow a business, and having them
Yeah.
being part of it and making that inspirational for them is like quite precious.
Yeah. I think one thing I've learned, so at the minute I'm reflecting back on what have I learned over the last 18 years, and my business back then when the kids were little is very different to how it is now, not just in terms of what I'm doing because that's evolved, but in terms of how I approached the business because back then I only had like nap times or like 5 minutes when they were doing something else. So my whole business was run through Post-it notes of 5-minute activities I could do. Like little things I could do in the car while I was waiting to pick them up from ballet class or whatever. So it was my time was so fragmented, but I built a business that would work around that. And and that helped me to build my confidence as well that, I can do this. And now obviously I have longer stretches of time so I can do things like write a book more easily. But it couldn't have been I would just couldn't have thought about doing that back then. I was too tired besides anything else. But as my business has evolved alongside my family as well, and it's really shown me that there is no one way to build a business. There's no one way to market your business. There's no one way to succeed. There's only your way. And figuring out what that is really the key. But in the process of figuring out how you'll make a business work, you understand so much more about how you make anything work. So even if you're taking up painting or tennis or anything, you can apply those lessons to that activity and be more successful too. So you learn so much about yourself. If anyone's considering it, you don't have to go all in and build $1 million empire. Just start with something. Just start small. Do one small thing on the side, even if it's just working an hour a week. I had a lady on my podcast and she worked 20 minutes a day and she did build $1 million business in that time. Um, so it can be done. It's just figuring out what works for you. And that's not an easy process, but it's so, so beneficial.
Yeah. There's no one size fits all, but there is a space for people to play with and explore a little bit more with that, isn't it? You're hosting an event in a couple of days where you
Yeah, I'm doing for the first time, I've broken down my value whispering process. Normally, I take people through the entire process, but for the first time, I'm breaking down just that first part because what I've seen right now is things have changed and you need to build trust, manage your energy more than ever, and be really clear about who you help and what your message is and what your value is, and really make sure you have all of that in place as the foundation to then go forward with much more clarity, much more confidence, and attract more of the right people. So I have broken it down to a 1 month process, and I'm kickstarting that on Monday. So I'm excited to get that started.
yay. So I'll drop the link in the comments for everyone who's watching who would like to check it out. But other than that, if they cannot join this one, what is the best way for people to find you, connect with you, ask you more questions, or work with you?
Well, I always love connecting and having conversations, so I'd love for people to reach out. You'll find me at melittacampbell.com, but that's Melita with two T's, or on LinkedIn, I'm at Melita. I've been here since the beginning, so just Melita, and you'll find me.
You're the one and only.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Like, as always, I say these conversations go super fast, but I am so very grateful that you were able to share the behind the scenes of such amazing work that you're doing. And hopefully, this will open the conversation for so many other people to start thinking differently from where they are at today and be inspired to have a better tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. And I say, if anyone has any questions or if anything we said resonated, then do reach out. I'd love to have a chat with you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone who's been watching us today live. And if you're just watching the replay, no worries. You can always send us the questions and we'll do our best to get back to you in due time if anything pops up.
Thanks, Mina.